So a while ago I decided I wanted to start carrying a little journal in my pocket to write down just various sundry information about the day, like what I ate, how much I weigh, all that sort of stuff. And I looked at buying something that might fit the bill, might fit in my pocket, and they're really expensive for some reason. People love paying lots of money for tiny books. So I made my own. This one's just some A4 paper cut out and stapled together. And it works all right, but there's a few problems with it. It's really susceptible to damage. It wears, like the spine. It's all falling apart here. It's got a bit of a tear in it. And when you fold the paper up, it sort of builds this little mountain on the edge. It's not a nice, clean, crisp edge on it. And the rounded corners are kind of irregular and crappy. So you can see in the corner here, I had a go at making a punch to punch a regular curve on the corner. That kind of worked. It was just a piece of 25mm tube with some careful grinding on it to put a sharp edge on one side. That wasn't too bad, but I wanted to make it a bit tougher. So this one I glued some calico on the outside. That was pretty good. It lasted a while. It's nice and robust. But yeah, it's also stapled, but the staples are hidden by the spine. I'd open it up and show you, but there's private stuff in there, so I shan't. Third one, I filled this one up and did another one in a hurry. So I made this one on the laser cutter. You can see the corners are nice and rounded, but the edges are still not perfectly nice, and there's piled up, and the cover's got damaged and the staples and so on and so forth. So sometime after here, we got a new lounge, a new couch, and the old one had leather on it. So I peeled all the leather off before we chucked it out, and I made some leather covered little notebooks, and I really like these. That's what this video is going to be. It's going to be how to make one of these. So you see the corners are nice and regular, the edges are nice and flat, it's nice tough leather on the outside, so it's very hard wearing. But they're still not 100% perfect. Like you can see when I was laser cutting them out, some sort of soot from the leather burning got into the paper, and it's not 100%, and these ones still have staples holding them together. The latest revision, this one's a little bit smaller. Actually, that's the wrong one. This one's a little bit smaller due to some whoopsies, but the main advancement I made on this one was that I used some heavy grade polyester thread to sew the spine, and that works really well. So the edges are nice and flat, and the corners are regular, and it feels nice in your hand, and yeah. So I'm going to show how I make these. Let's do that. So step one is to find a suitable piece of leather, and well, there's a piece right on top. So it's about the right size to cut out the shape without too much wastage, and it's relatively flat, so I'll trim that out. Okay, so this piece should do nicely. It's all trimmed out, but you notice there's a bit of wobble to it, some folds and stuff. So you might not think that's a big deal, but we have to do some really high tolerance laser cutting on this, and if it's not very, very flat, then that goes horribly awry. So next step is to iron it flat. Let's do that. There we go. So we haven't got an ironing board anymore, so I've just laid it out on some carpet. Lay it down fuzzy side up. Chuck a tea towel on top. Get your iron set to the hottest, steamiest setting, and then just iron it. Takes a while because you want the heat to soak into the leather, get it all fully warmed up, and get all those wrinkles out of it. Periodically check that you're not making it worse by folding over a corner, but yeah, it takes a little while because you want it to get fully heated all the way through. You can't really get it too hot. You could probably get it too moist, but just go at it a while, iterate, check that you're not forming a crease in there anywhere until it's all nice and flat. Because yeah, if it's got a sort of broad scale wobble in it, weft, then when you try to laser cut it, some parts will be closer to the laser than others, and it'll cut more or cut less, and it'll just be a bad time for all. So yeah, get it as flat as you can. You could probably skip this if you're buying your leather, or if you're using some other leather equivalent. But for recycled leather, like I'm using, it's got detail in it. You got to get rid of it. Okay, I'll just do this for a while. It's not very interesting to watch, so bye bye. And there you go. Pretty flat. Some minor surface corner curling up, but we can always find a good patch that we can cut out that is big enough to do what we need to do. There's a bit of a irregularity there, but I might have another go at ironing it. But let it cool, lying down flat on something, because leather's like a bit of a thermoplastic, I guess. It'll tend to stay where it cooled. It'll stay in the shape in which it cooled. Okay, on to the next step. Okay, so here we've got the piece of leather laid out in the laser cutter and oriented such that we can make good use of a chunk of it without too much wastage. So that's drawing the boundaries of what we're going to cut. Now let's do the cut. There we go. Hooey, that stinks. So, that's what we got. So there were two operations you saw there. The first one was the thinning of the spine. So the leather's quite thick, and so when you fold it over, it's much thicker than the paper. So if you don't want a big bunch up at the spine, you have to thin the leather out a lot. And this is what I was meaning when I was saying that it's highly sensitive. We're doing some fancy operations. Because if your leather is not regular thickness and flat, then this pass is either going to not cut deep enough or it's going to blow straight through. So it took a while to tune my settings such that we didn't get this sort of patchy breakthrough on this side. And the second operation was just to cut around the outside. So next up we have to cut out the paper. So here we've got two sheets of A4 laid out, and I'm going to cut them up. So this step wouldn't be too hard to do with scissors and whatnot, but you know, when you have a laser cutter, shortcuts a lot of tedious measurement. And there we have it. Our paper. Okay, next step. So here we are set up on the sewing machine. We've got this relatively heavy grade polyester thread in there. I don't know anything about it. I'm reading the spool now, but I don't know what any of these numbers mean. So I've got a piece of paper here. I should mention this is just regular old printer paper, like 90 grams per square meter, A4, bulk standard stuff. And I've folded this piece over 3 times to give us the right number of layers so we can get all the tension, everything tuned in. This should still be set up from last time, so see how we go. That looks pretty good to me. Oh, that looks like a bit of a mess. I might tune these settings. Okay. So this is the side that goes on the outside that's hidden by the leather. So it doesn't look like it doesn't matter too much that that's a bit of a mess, as long as it's structurally good. Because this is the side that you can see inside. And, oh yeah, now I remember. So I've tuned the tension such that one of the threads is just looped by the other side, so it stays pretty much straight on this side, whereas this one does all the work of actually going through, looping over and pulling back. So depending on what sort of style you want, you can tweak the tension and tweak the feeds and get it looking good, but I'm happy with that. So let's go for it. It's jammed. It's a bit of a contactless machine. So here we're all set up. I've got 8 quarter pieces of A4 stacked up here, and I've drawn a line down the center as a guide. And let's go. Pretty happy with that. Alright, sweet. Next one. Right, now to put a crease in it. So I've just sort of folded it over there, making sure I've got the nice side of the stitch on the inside. And now we've got to really make sure that that crease is nice and flat so we get a good spine. So I'm going to use my vise for this. Now, when you're clamping stuff in a vise, especially soft stuff like paper, it's going to take the texture of whatever you're using to clamp it. So I've got some shims here, some melamine, and that I've got a relatively flat surface on them. So I'm going to use those to protect the paper inside the vise so it doesn't go all wonky. Not that it really matters too much because this part is going to be covered up by the leather, but still. So get that in there and clamp the blazes out of it. And then just leave it for a couple of hours. Let that crease well and truly develop. I mean, maybe you could cut this down faster if you were impatient, or maybe if you wet the paper beforehand such that the fibres stay bent. But yeah, I'm in no big hurry, so I'll leave it like this. Let that crease form. Okay, bye. Right, so now we bring it all together. So I've got the piece of paper with the sewn spine and the crimped curve, and I've got my laser cut piece of leather with the thinner section on the in the spine. Got some baking paper down. I've got myself some PVA glue here, some Acrid here, whatever. Not really critical. I've also got a couple of pieces of extra baking paper cut out. So this glue soaks into paper. So to stop it gluing a bunch of pages together, I just pop a piece of baking paper in between, just after the first and just before the last pages, such that the glue doesn't soak in further than the baking paper. Or wax-proof paper, or grease-proof paper, waxed paper. So yeah, now we just grab my little brush, make sure this is relatively clean. Ugh, there's a fair bit of soot in there, probably should have cleaned that out beforehand, whatever. Oh, it's leather, so it stinks. A note on leather, some types of leather are not safely laser cuttable. They've got, I think it's chromium based tanning compound in them or something that makes them toxic to laser cut. I think it's the tanning compound. Or it might not be toxic, it might be both toxic and corrosive, or something like that. Some types of leather are not laser cuttable, so do your own research. I know that any sort of imitation leather that uses PVC is a definite no-no. I say definite, I'm now questioning myself. There are types of plastic that you can't laser cut because they make basically hydrogen cyanide when they're burned, which is real bad for you. You don't want that in you. So this leather really drinks up this glue, so I'm really putting a nice thick layer on there, but when we get to clamping, it's going to sort of squidge a lot of that glue out of the leather. Can't really go overboard at this point, I don't think. That was a silly thing to say. Of course you can go overboard, but I have never had a problem going overboard with the glue at this stage. Okay, glue's on. Piece of paper, piece of baking paper between the first. Let's just check, yes, yes, all good. Now we want to get this lined up. It's a bit of a one shot and you're done here. If you get it wrong, it's kind of a pain in the butt to fix. So don't get it wrong. Let's see if I follow my own advice. Hey, I didn't get too far wrong. So you'll notice there's a bit of paper poking out around the edge. That's fine. We are going to do a trim pass on this to get all the edges nice and to round over the corners. So don't panic at this stage. So let's get this all wrapped up. Then I got a big piece of wood here and a clamp. And once again, I'm going to clamp the bejesus out of it. I'll do that off camera because it's kind of awkward with the camera here. Okay, it's been like 6 hours, 8 hours. Let's unclamp this. There we go. Looks nice. Didn't get the spine exactly in the right place, but it'll do the job. Cool. Alright, so now to go and trim the edge straight. Yeah, I botched that pretty badly actually. The other benefit of doing this cut, the very last, is that it hides a bunch of mistakes, like this one. And it means that the covers and the pages are all at exactly the same point, exactly the same position. So when you flip it with your thumb, that you can easily flip through all the pages. At the moment, you can't really do that because you get to halfway where the pages poke out the most. That just slips off your thumb. Whereas if they're all cut, like commercially, this is done with a guillotine, but I got a laser. So yeah, makes it nice. Okay, let's go do that now. Okay, so here's the cut job. So it's got 2 different operations. These black lines here trim straight along the edges, and then the blue arcs come and trim the corners off afterwards. Don't entirely remember why I did those in 2 separate operations. I don't know. Who knows? So you see also there's a red box around it. So the red box is the shape of the size of the raw stock, and then so I lose some stuff around the edge. That's just what I'm trimming off to make it look good. Okay, so the setup over here is slightly weird. I've got a block of aluminium weighing it down to keep it nice and flat, and the bed height is set such that the laser is focused halfway through the book as opposed to on the surface, because I want maximum cutting power, because this is quite a thick chunk of stuff to cut through. 2 layers of leather and 16 layers of paper, which it ain't nothing. So I'm doing 60% power, 80 millimeters per second, 6 passes, I think, on an 80 watt CO2 laser. 60 millimeters per second, 80% power, 6 passes. So quite a lot. But yeah, let's give it a go. Wait for the leather stank to get suctioned out. Crack it open a little bit, increase the airflow. Okay, so now I've got to be very careful, collect all of those scraps without nudging it, and then I'll run the operation that trims the corners. Dunzo. Again, do the stank weight. Ugh. Be glad you're on the internet and not smelling this. There we have it. Start to finish. Cool little notebook. Almost finished. I've got to go grab a tissue and rub all that soot off the edge. Nothing like sort of leather soot on your hands to ruin a nice day. But I'm happy with that. Okay, bye bye.